Are we rolling?
Yeah.
I'm Vincent Fecto, and we're in my studio in San Francisco. I'm with Jordan Stein and Keith Wilson, and I'm talking with them about my show in Kassel at the Friederichsmuseum. Well, I've been interested in interior decorating, design, architecture for, since I was a child, actually. And as is my way, there was the time when I was making these kind of smaller architectural collage sculptures earlier on that were like foam core and collage materials. And the collage materials were from largely from like Architectural Digest or architectural magazines. The first piece you would see once you come in from the rotunda, which is the Bars I've Been In and Boys I've Been With piece. And because that was kind of around the same time as, or just before the Ben work. And I had just left school. I had lived in San Francisco maybe a year or so. I was going out to gay bars. And I was interested in how to use photography and how to mesh that with sculpture. And I'm not sure what it came from some impulse about architectural models. So I was trying to figure out how to kind of meld those two things together, sculptures or architecture and photography, and get the specificity that you get in photography into sculpture. And so that was kind of the background from which I was starting to make work, is this idea that was thinking about identity, thinking about conceptual artwork, not prioritizing the material form of the thing itself. So all that work is very kind of flimsy materials and not interested in craft. At the time, I was also really interested in recovered memories that it was a big cultural thing that was going on. And E.T. and alien abductions and all this kind of stuff. I was very sort of interested in where those things all intermingled in my head. I think at the time I felt like it was necessary. Like I just felt that's what you're supposed to be doing. I don't think I was ever that interested in being so explicit about it. And I realized that by setting that up with some amount of narrative structure, that's all people then would kind of focus on. Like people always want the story. And that's part of the reasons why I very, very rarely use titles, because I feel like people just go to that and then they build from there. I mean, I think for many, many people, they prioritize language over what visual. And I don't think I do, and I'm not that interested. And I'm interested in kind of deprioritizing language, because I think there's so much information and so much nuance and subtlety that can happen with just visual information. The function of art for me, I think, is to make world expand, not to contract. So to contain things is not interesting to me. It's to open things up. So the work should like make you think maybe something you never thought before, or make a connection that you're like, oh wow, that's like when I see work that's interesting to me, it's always something that I thought, oh, I never quite thought that could lead to that thought, or it opens something. It's expansive, not restrictive. And I think my process is very much like I'm futzing around for a while, and then I start getting obsessed, and then I can't stop thinking about these things, and it's really like a kind of like unrelenting, like every day I'm like, oh, that piece, and I'm usually working on a bunch of things at the same time, and so there's like 8 or 10 things going around, and they're all kind of driving me crazy, and they're not quite working, and then they start like coalescing, and the obsession starts to fade a little bit, and then at some point I don't really care anymore. Like I'm just kind of, they've done, and or they and I have done what we can together, and that's it. Like we both kind of I think it's like when I don't have children, but I imagine like if you have kids and they get to a certain age and you're like, all right, it's time for you to go. Like I can't help you anymore. You got to go on your own. And it kind of feels like that to me. Like I work a lot and a long time on these pieces, but there is a moment when I'm done, and I'm not interested in going back. I know there's artists who like always want to go back and fix things. I do not want to go near. I don't like being around them so much, which is one of the other interesting things about thinking about going to Kassel is like, to be faced with all these things that I have this very intense relationship over so many years. It's just like almost too much to bear. Like, I don't know what my experience of that will be like. It's clearer, I think, in the collage stuff that everything always has this kind of, for me, has to make me laugh a little bit. There's always a sort of, I think, perverted little catch to things. It can't ever be, it's never fully serious, or it never takes itself fully serious, I think. And that's probably an escape hatch for myself. Like I can be like, oh, well, it's not really, I mean, even the most serious looking sculptures often have like a little thing that kind of undercuts their seriousness. I mean, and maybe it is like a way of eluding this kind of responsibility of like, oh, I'm a serious artist, and this is what I can kind of always say like, well, I'm not really, I mean, it's interesting to be asked to talk about something that is finished when the finished thing for me is the least interesting part of the whole thing. Because the finished things it's not that they're irrelevant, but they're only kind of like guideposts or something. They're just like, oh, it's like leaving crumbs on the trail. And I guess that's my experience of looking at older artists and works that I admire. I can kind of follow their crumbs and say like, oh, okay, that's amazing that they got there. And, when you can feel a person's brain in what they do, it's amazing that can actually happen. It's like the mystery. I mean, I often think about like spirituality and art making as sort of parallel activities or whatever. And I think, it's like the mystery of faith. The beauty of it is the mystery, is that you don't know, is that you have to like leap into the faith. You have to give yourself over to it. Like that's why it's valuable. And the same thing with art. Like you have to give yourself over to it. That's why it's so interesting and important. So with the Secession pieces, that was at the time I think I was still working at the florist, and they had these giant cardboard flower boxes. And I was looking at them, and I liked their proportions. They're kind of these long, narrow, kind of large boxes. And I thought, oh, that's where I'm going to start. This, I was just looking for something to like get into that process. And so all those pieces from that show all started from these boxes. And I would, paper mache the box itself, cut it apart, paper mache, cut it apart, paper mache, over and over and over again. And then eventually start putting paint on it. That then changes the way I think about the form, then put more paint, change the color, change the form, back and forth and back and forth. And to me, it's always about this kind of search for this kind of balance and complexity, and being able to know and not know. And there needs to be some kind of structure so that you can start messing with the structure, right? So it's all about like getting balance, but then screwing up that balance is kind of the way I'm thinking while I'm working the whole time. Art is the thing that you don't really need, but it makes everything better, right? It's like the joy. And part of like starting with usually a form like a flower box or a beach ball or something is that I treat the forms that I'm working on as found objects too. So like I will work on them, and then I kind of approach them as if I found them. It's helpful for me to come downstairs and just act like these things have been, they just arrived here, and I just deal with what's in front of me, rather than it's something, like I don't really think about it as mine, I made this. It's easier for me to kind of think of it as if it's, I'm reacting to something. Like I'm always like changing the thing that's there, rather than building it up from the ground up, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't, to me, the process is much more disjointed than that. It's kind of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's not a linear process at all. I think if I have a desire for them, it's that they feel as if they had to exist that way, like as if they've already been that way, that they end up in this form that is the only way they could be. Like there's no other option. Like, and that's part of like when they end for me, like there's no other place they can go. That for better or for worse, that's their resting point or something. Like I often work from the negative. Like I just change the things that are bothering me. So every day I come downstairs and I immediately I don't think about things. I just sort of, the thing that's irritating me that I see in my peripheral vision is the thing that I change. So, and I don't question it anymore, and I never go back. I never replace the thing that I changed. I just go to the next step. So everything becomes a movement forward. Like there's no moving backwards. I often think about the painterly aspect. I mean, the forms as paintings, not necessarily just the painting on the surface. Some of my favorite artists are painters, and wishing I could be a painter, but not being able to think two-dimensionally. Like I just don't, my brain doesn't work that way. So basically I'm trying to construct a painting, and I think in some ways the sculptures even are constructions of paintings, The process is not it's an intuitive process. So I'm not actually thinking that much about those kinds of issues. It really is just one reaction to another, to another, to another, to another. It's just one step after another, after another. No, when I was a kid, I was really interested in Star Wars, which I'm not anymore. But I was very interested in the sets and the spaceships and stuff. And I would make my spaceships downstairs in the basement, which is basically what I'm doing now.